The gavel fell like thunder. In a single breath, I lost my $28 million estate and custody of my grandchildren. The sound echoed across the cold courtroom, bouncing off marble walls that seemed designed to magnify humiliation. My hands trembled against the wooden bench, as if the vibration of that single strike had traveled through the floor and into my bones. Across the aisle, my son Brandon straightened his black suit, the same one I had bought him for his 39th birthday. His shoulders were squared, his expression confident, as if he had just won a trial against a stranger. But the stranger was me. The judge's voice was measured. This court finds Mrs. Eleanor Hayes unfit to manage her estate or provide safe guardianship for minors. All assets and custody are transferred to Mr. Brandon Hayes, effective immediately. My breath caught. Unfit. That word stabbed deeper than any verdict. I had been a professor of history for 40 years. My mind had carried students through centuries of wars, revolutions, and renaissances. And now, in one morning, my own son painted me as a woman incapable of remembering a stove burner. I forced myself to lift my gaze toward Brandon. His eyes were steel. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, sat behind him in a shimmering gold dress, hands folded neatly in her lap. She tilted her head just enough to catch the light, a perfect picture of the devoted wife. When the judge mentioned danger to minors, Tiffany pressed a tissue delicately to her eyes, as if rehearsed for the cameras that weren't there. I could hear the whispers ripple through the gallery. So sad. Imagine your own son doing this. Each murmur cut deeper. My fingers dug crescents into my palms. Brandon leaned slightly toward me as the judge prepared to adjourn. His lips curved into a smile that no one else could see. His whisper slid into my ear like poison. "You'll never see the kids again, crazy old fool." The words stole the air from my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't move. Ethan and Zoe's faces flashed in my mind, their giggles in the garden, the way they clutched my hand on the walk to school. How could my own son use them as weapons against me? The bailiff's voice broke the silence. "All rise." The session was over. The gavel still echoed in my bones as I clutched the chair. My fingers could not hold the wood. I tried to stand with dignity, though my knees wobbled under the weight of betrayal. Tiffany brushed past me, her perfume sharp, her expression smooth. She didn't look at me directly, but I caught the corner of her mouth twitching upward. Outside the courthouse, cameras never came. No one cared about a grandmother stripped of her family. Only the sky noticed. Clouds had gathered thick and heavy during the trial. As I stepped into the open air, the first drop of rain struck my cheek like a tear from heaven. Then another, then many, until the steps of the courthouse were slick and glistening. I pulled my coat tighter, but it could not protect me, not from the cold words echoing in my head. "Crazy old fool." Not from the image of Tiffany's carefully staged sorrow, not from the judge's voice declaring me unfit. I walked slowly down the courthouse stairs, clutching my bag like a shield. Each step was heavier than the last, as though the marble had turned to lead. Passers-by hurried under umbrellas, indifferent to the soaked woman moving like a ghost. In that downpour, I asked myself the first of many questions. How long had Brandon planned this? How much of Tiffany's hand was guiding him? And most painfully, when had my son stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an obstacle? The rain intensified, drumming on the hood of a parked car, splashing into the gutter where old leaves floated like little coffins. I paused beneath the courthouse arch, my reflection fractured in the puddles at my feet. The motif was clear to me. Even then, storms did not only fall from the sky. Sometimes they erupted from within your own blood. I thought of Eli, my late husband, and his pocket watch he had carried everywhere. He used to say, "Time reveals truth, Ellie. Paper can outlast lies. Rain washes what words cannot." At that moment, I clung to the memory like a lifeline. Behind me, Brandon's laughter carried faintly as he spoke to Tiffany. They were already planning. I could hear the confidence in his tone, the certainty of victory. But in my heart, beneath the thunder and the rain, something stirred. A question I could not yet answer. Had Eli known this day would come? I turned away from the courthouse and stepped into the storm. The rain baptized me in silence, and I walked carrying only the weight of loss, not yet knowing that in the shadows of memory, a safe was waiting, and inside it the truth. They gave me 1 week to leave. 7 days to strip 40 years of love, sweat, and memory from a house that had been my heartbeat. My Buckhead mansion, appraised at $28 million, was no longer mine. The moving trucks arrived before the sun was high, their engines growling like predators at the gate. Men in uniforms filed in with empty boxes, their voices brisk, their hands efficient. To them, I was not the owner, but a tenant overstaying her welcome. Brandon walked behind them, directing every step with the confidence of a landlord. His voice was clipped. "Pack everything. We need the place cleared by Friday." I stood at the bottom of the staircase, my hand resting on the carved oak banister Eli and I had polished every spring. How many times had I watched Ethan and Zoe slide down these rails, laughing, their little socks squeaking against the wood. Now strangers touched it with gloves measuring tape hanging from their belts, their eyes scanning for market value, not memory. "Brandon," I said, my voice small but steady, "please let me keep a few things. The family photo albums, the quilt your grandmother made, just a handful of books from Eli's library." He didn't even turn to face me. "Everything stays with the house. The decorators need a clean slate." A clean slate. As if decades of my life were stains to be scrubbed away. Tiffany entered from the patio, a phone pressed to her ear, her laughter light and careless. "Yes, the remodel can begin as soon as she's out," she told someone before glancing at me with a smile too polished to be sincere. Her red nails tapped against the doorframe, each click a reminder of the power she believed she held. I walked to the mantel above the fireplace, where Eli's pocket watch used to rest. It wasn't there. Brandon had already packed it away, locked it in some inventory box. My chest tightened. That watch wasn't gold. It wasn't worth a fortune. But it had been Eli's constant companion. He wound it every morning at 6, the tick, steady as his heartbeat. To me, it was time itself, proof that truth always outlives lies. Now even time had been stolen from me. The workers carried out chairs, tables, rugs. I trailed behind them from room to room, touching walls, as if my fingertips could cling to the past. The kitchen smelled of lemon polish, the same scent Eli used after Sunday dinners. The library shelves were half empty already, books stacked carelessly in boxes. I picked one up, the spine cracked from Eli's hand. A stranger yanked it away. "Ma'am, please step aside." Mom, not mother, not Mrs. Hayes. Just a nuisance in her own home. I reached for Brandon's arm. For a second he hesitated, eyes flicking toward me. I saw the boy who once clutched my hand, crossing busy streets, the teenager who begged me to stay awake while he studied for exams. That boy was gone. "Please," I whispered. "At least let me take the photo of you on your first day of law school." "Your father framed it himself." His jaw tightened. I said no. The words cracked like a whip. Tiffany's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. I stumbled back the room, tilting. My palms pressed against the cold marble of the foyer floor, the same spot where Eli and I once danced at our anniversary, laughing as the rain outside beat against the windows. Rain. It had followed me from the courthouse to this house. Even now, thunder rolled faintly beyond the glass. The workers finished loading the first truck. Doors slammed shut. My memories left in cardboard coffins. Upstairs, the nursery door creaked open. I climbed slowly, heart pounding. Ethan's drawings still decorated the walls, stick figures holding hands under bright suns. Zoe's doll sat crooked on the windowsill. Their voices echoed in my mind. Grandma read us one more story. But the room was already half dismantled. The quilt folded, the toys boxed. A stranger whistled while carrying out the crib. I pressed my forehead against the window pane. Rain streaked down the glass in crooked lines, merging with my tears until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I turned, searching desperately for one last anchor. In the drawer of Eli's desk, I found a small slip of paper with his handwriting, "Time reveals truth." 3 words underlined twice. I clutched it like a relic, sliding it into my pocket before anyone could notice. That was my resistance. That was my pocket watch, in another form, reminding me that lies have deadlines. By dusk, the house was hollow. My footsteps echoed where laughter used to bloom. Brandon stood at the doorway, arms crossed his shadow, long in the fading light. "You need to leave now," he said. I walked past him without looking back. The rain was falling harder, drenching me before I reached the taxi waiting at the curb. As the car pulled away, I caught a final glimpse of the mansion through the wet blur of glass. Brandon's figure remained at the door, tall, rigid, unyielding. Tiffany's arm looped through his. My home was no longer mine. My son was no longer mine. But the paper in my pocket, the echo of Eli's watch, whispered that the story was not finished. The rain followed me into the mountains. By the time the taxi dropped me at the gate of Eli's ranch in Blue Ridge, my coat was soaked through the fabric, clinging heavy against my skin. I stepped out into mud that sucked at my shoes, staring at a house that once echoed with summer barbecues and children's laughter. Now it stood abandoned shutters, hanging loose weeds, curling up the porch rails, like claws reclaiming their prize. The driver asked if I wanted him to wait. I shook my head. This was exile, not a visit. I needed to walk through it alone. I pushed open the gate. The metal groaned in protest. My fingers left smears on the wet iron as I crossed the yard. Every step felt like trespassing into my own life. The porch sagged under my weightboards, swollen with rain. When I opened the door, the smell hit me mold dust and the faint ghost of cedar Eli once loved. Inside, silence roared. Furniture covered in white sheets looked like shrouds. Cobwebs draped the corners. The air was damp, clinging to my throat. I flicked the light switch out of habit. Nothing. The power had long been cut. Only the steady patter of rain on the roof kept me company. I set my bag on the floor and wrapped my arms around myself. Moisture clung to my throat. I breathed out and watched pale vapor rise inside a room draped in white sheets like shrouds. My footsteps echoed too loud as I walked room to room, peeling back sheets, brushing away dust. This ranch had been Eli's retreat, his sanctuary, when city life pressed too hard. He brought me here once every autumn, claiming the mountain air healed the mind. I had forgotten how still it could be without him. Mini-climax came as I climbed the staircase. My hand trailed the banister, sticky with years of neglect. At the top, I opened the master bedroom. The bed frame was stripped bare mattress leaning against the wall. On the dresser lay a cracked picture frame face down. I turned it over. The glass had splintered into spiderwebs, but behind it remained a photo of Eli, Ethan, and Zoe sitting on the porch swing sun, painting their faces gold. My knees buckled. I collapsed to the floor, clutching the frame against my chest. The shards of glass pricked my palm, but I didn't loosen my grip. Tears blurred the edges until Eli's smile swam in water. I rocked back and forth, whispering his name like a prayer that could summon him back. Rain hammered harder on the roof, drowning the sound of my sobs. I pressed the photo tighter, my cheek against broken glass. The loneliness wrapped around me like chains. In that moment, I wasn't a professor, a widow, or even a mother. I was just a woman discarded, holding on to ghosts. I forced myself to breathe. 1, 2. The pocket in my coat rustled. I reached inside and touched the slip of paper I had taken from Eli's desk back in Buckhead time. Reveals truth. My fingers traced the letters until I felt steady enough to rise. That paper was my watch, ticking in silence, a reminder that even in this desolation, something remained. I walked to the window. Through the streaks of rain, I could see the outline of the barn. Its roof sagged, But I remembered Eli's laughter echoing from inside when he taught Brandon to hammer nails straight. I remembered Ethan chasing fireflies there one summer. Memories burned sharper in ruins. Another room pulled me next. The study. Books slumped on warped shelves, pages curled from damp. I ran a hand over the spines. History volumes, journals. Eli's notes scribbled in the margins. Paperwork again, quiet but alive, whispering his presence through ink. I sat at the desk, the wood gritty with dust. My palm brushed against a groove Eli had carved years ago when he fixed a hinge. My chest tightened. Even in absence, his hands were here. Night came fast in the mountains. Darkness swallowed the rooms until only lightning lit the walls in violent flashes. I lit a candle from my bag, the small flame trembling in the draught. Shadows stretched long, wavering, like the ghosts of everyone I had lost. I curled on the couch under a sheet, the cracked photo still against my chest. The rain's rhythm became my lullaby. Thunder rolled deep, but I let it wash me clean. If storms could strip a house to its bones, maybe they could strip me to something stronger. Before sleep dragged me under, I whispered to Eli's watch in my imagination, "Time, do your work. Show me the truth," he promised. And the rain kept answering steady, relentless avowal from the mountain that silence never means the end. The stove scraped across the tiles with a sound like bones grinding. I had been scrubbing since dawn, trying to chase away silence with the rhythm of work. My hands were raw from bleach and steel wool. When I bent to wipe the floor beneath the old oven, I noticed something odd. The tiles ended abruptly against a square outline in the wall, faint but deliberate. My breath caught. I pressed my palm against it. Cold metal hidden behind years of grease and dust. A safe, small but solid. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Why here? Why would Eli, a man who never kept secrets from me, hide something in the kitchen behind a stove? No one moved. I sat back on my heels, staring. The keypad waited in silence, 6 empty digits glowing faint green. My hands trembled as I tried the obvious. Our wedding date, June 15th, 1982. Rejected. Then Eli's birthday, December 23rd, 1953. Rejected again. Mini-climax struck when I hesitated before Brandon's birth date. Would Eli have chosen it? I keyed in August 11th, 1981. The screen flashed red, harsh and final. I pressed my knuckles to my lips. What number mattered most to him? Then I remembered his words, spoken so many times across our 40 years. Ellie, the day you were born, the world gave me everything I would ever need. My throat closed. With shaking fingers I typed March 15th, 1957. Green light blinked. A heavy click echoed. The door swung open an inch, exhaling air, stale with secrets. Inside papers lay stacked in neat bundles, a voice recorder tucked beside them, and on top a letter with my name written in Eli's unmistakable hand. My knees nearly gave way. I lifted it carefully, the edges soft from time. The first line seared through me. If you are reading this, the time for the truth has come. My vision blurred. I pressed the page to my chest, then forced myself to keep reading. My love, if your eyes find these words, it means I am gone. And it means Brandon has turned against you. Do not be shocked. I saw the shadows long before you did. I gathered proof, but I could not bear to tell you while I lived. I knew it would break your heart too soon. The letters swam in candlelight. Rain lashed against the windows, steady and relentless, as if underlining every sentence. I unfolded more pages. Bank statements, property deeds, corporate contracts, all under names I didn't recognize. Eli had transferred money, hidden investments, diverted everything Brandon thought he controlled. Every page whispered he prepared for betrayal. Mini-climax returned when I pressed the recorder's button. Eli's voice filled the kitchen, low and steady. Ellie, if you are hearing this, you must be strong. Tiffany has poisoned his mind. she will try to poison yours. Trust the paperwork I leave behind. It speaks louder than their lies. Tears streaked my face. His voice carried the warmth of Sunday mornings and the firmness of boardroom battles. I clutched the recorder as if it were his hand. I shuffled through the rest. Photographs of prescription bottles I had never seen. Notes in Eli's neat script. Dr. Thorne paid by Tiffany. Neighbors bribed. Brandon manipulated. A timeline stretched across 5 years, detailing her steps dinners laced with powder-staged episodes of confusion, corrupt evaluations. Cao Trao surged as the final line of the letter stared back at me. She is planning more than theft. She is planning to erase you, and when you are gone, Brandon will not survive her either. Do not grieve him yet. Save him. Save the children. Save yourself. I have armed you with everything. I dropped the papers, clutching the edge of the counter to keep from falling. Eli had known. He had seen the storm coming and built me a lifeboat from ink and steel. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the kitchen. The safe gaped open, its contents spread across the counter like a map of war. I pressed the pocket watch Eli once gave me into my palm, feeling its worn curve. It ticked faintly, a heartbeat, bridging past to present. Time, he had said, would reveal truth. Tonight, time delivered. I whispered into the empty house. Eli, I hear you, and I will not let your work be wasted. Water rushed through the gutters, carrying leaves down the slope. But inside me, a new steadiness rose. Not hope yet, but resolve. The safe had not only preserved papers, it had preserved Eli's faith in me. As candlelight flickered, I gathered the documents back into a bundle. My fingers no longer trembled. Each page was a weapon, each recording a shield, each word of Eli's a promise that silence would break and truth would stand. That night I placed the letter under my pillow. Sleep came in fragments broken by thunder, but every time I woke, I reached for the pocket watch, for the papers stacked beside me, for Eli's voice whispering through the recorder. They anchored me in the storm. When dawn bled pale across the mountains, I stood in the kitchen once more, facing the open safe. I traced the edge with my hand. This was no hiding place. It was a doorway. Behind the hum of rain and the weight of loss, I could almost hear Eli's final command. Go. Fight. Let the paperwork speak. The letter trembled in my hands, though the candle flame held steady. Eli's handwriting stretched across the page, each stroke carved with urgency. His voice seemed to rise from the paper, carrying secrets too heavy for silence. Ellie, if you are still reading it, means you are strong enough to know the rest. I must tell you about Tiffany. My throat tightened as I traced his words. I studied her past quietly when I saw the unease in your eyes. Tiffany has lived many lives, and each ended in the ruin of the man who loved her. Her first husband was Edward Sanders, a wealthy man, 20 years her senior. Within months of their marriage, his health declined rapidly. Doctors called it a heart attack at 50. But neighbors spoke of her sudden inheritances, the medications she bought, the strange way he wasted away. She spent the fortune within a year. Mini-climax surged. I pressed my palm against the table, forcing myself to keep going. Eli had known, yet carried it alone. Her second husband, Paul Jennings, was young, successful, and ambitious. Within weeks of their wedding, she announced her pregnancy. But Paul suspected infidelity. He ordered a paternity test. Before results could arrive, Tiffany vanished with the child. Paul was found dead 6 months later, another so-called heart condition. The pattern was too sharp to be coincidence. The words pulled me under. Tiffany had woven death into every vow she made. I lifted my eyes to the rain streaming down the window. Drops slid like tears across glass. How could I have welcomed her into my family, seated her at my table, let her tuck my grandchildren into bed? I read on. Ellie. When Brandon brought Tiffany home, I felt the chill of déjà vu. She played the part perfectly devoted wife, caring mother. But I noticed her medicine cabinet, pills that never belonged to her, traces of powders she sprinkled in wine. Subtle doses meant not to kill, but to confuse. To create moments where a woman forgets her keys, repeats her words, leaves the stove burning. My chest heaved. Suddenly, every dizzy spell, every lapse, every strange night after dinner at their house returned with blinding clarity. It had not been my age. It had been her hand. Mini climax again. I clutched Eli's pocket watch from my coat pocket, the metal warm, despite the cold air. Time ticked steady against my palm, reminding me that truth always rises. The letter continued. She has been preparing Brandon for years, feeding him doubts, recording your smallest mistakes, twisting them into symptoms. He believes he is protecting you, Ellie, but he is being manipulated. He is blind because he loves too much. And love without truth is the cruelest weapon. Tears streaked the paper. Brandon, my son, thinking he was saving me while tightening the chains Tiffany forged. I gathered what I could: documents, photos, medical receipts, even names of the doctors she paid. When my voice is gone, let the documents speak. Do not waste your breath against liars. Paperwork will stand when words fail. I trust you to carry this fight. The phrase struck me like thunder. Let the documents speak. My fingers brushed the stack of evidence spread across the counter. Contracts, prescriptions, forged notes. Each page heavier than stone, yet steadier than my own breath. I leaned back, eyes closed, and heard Eli's voice inside my chest. Paper is patient. It will not tremble in fear. It will not forget. The candle guttered in a gust of wind. Shadows leapt across the walls. For a moment, I thought I heard his footsteps, but it was only the rain, steady and endless, tapping like a metronome of memory. Mini climax rose higher. The letter unfolded to its final section. Ellie, the storm is coming. You are not powerless. Brandon may call you weak. Tiffany may call you mad. Judges may believe lies. Yet truth rests in ink and signatures. I have armed you with evidence. Use it wisely. When your voice shakes, place the papers on the table and let them speak for you. They will not falter. And remember, time will show who you really are. I pressed the letter to my lips. My body shook not from fear, but from the weight of clarity. Eli had built a fortress in silence, brick by brick of evidence, waiting for me to find it. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, echoing his warning. Tiffany was not only dangerous, she was practiced, patient, lethal. And Brandon, my child, was her weapon. I stared at the documents, the recorder, the safe yawning open like a witness. Eli had left me an arsenal. Proof of lies, proof of poison, proof of her past. My hand tightened around the pocket watch once more, its tick faint but insistent. Past, present, and future, bound in rhythm. Cow trow swelled as I whispered to the empty kitchen. You underestimated me, Tiffany. You thought age made me frail. But Eli believed in me more than you feared me. And now his papers will speak. The air smelled of wet earth, as thunder rolled like a drum of warning before the war had even begun. The rain had not stopped. It hammered the tin roof of the ranch, as if drumming a rhythm to remind me I was still alive, still meant to fight. I spread Eli's documents across the kitchen table, page after page, whispering truths Brandon and Tiffany never imagined I would see. Hook came sharp and fast. The mansion Brandon stole, worth $28 million on paper, was not the fortune at all. Buried in these folders was the real empire Eli had protected. Mini climax struck as I turned to a slim file marked only with my initials. Inside were account statements from offshore banks in the Cayman Islands, Zurich, and Singapore. Numbers rolled across the page, clean and undeniable balances that dwarfed the Buckhead estate. Eli had moved assets years before, beyond Tiffany's reach, beyond Brandon's greed. I pressed a hand to my chest. My husband had hidden our legacy in plain sight, behind layers of corporations, trusts, and deeds. Each document glimmered like armor, forged to protect me. But then came the twist. The Buckhead mansion, the jewel Brandon believed he won, was nothing but a poisoned chalice. Eli had mortgaged it, wrapped it in debts, liens, and tax burdens. Anyone who claimed it would inherit obligations heavier than gold. Brandon thought he had claimed victory. In truth, he had shackled himself to ruin. I could almost hear Eli's voice, calm and deliberate. Let the paperwork speak. I flipped to another folder, and my stomach tightened. A transcript typed and dated 2 years ago. Alongside it, a memory card taped to the page. I slid it into the recorder, pressed play. Tiffany's voice oozed through the speaker. Honey over venom. The old fool won't last. Once Brandon has the estate in his name, he's mine. And when the time is right, he'll follow the others. A man answered, steady, clinical. You'll need the dosage adjusted. Too much, and suspicion rises. Too little, and it drags on. My hand clenched so hard, the recorder creaked. Another voice, a friend of hers, perhaps, laughed softly. And what then? Another widow's fortune for you to spend. Tiffany replied without hesitation. Not a widow this time. A grieving wife, then a grieving mother. By the time Brandon is gone, everything will be signed over. The children will never know. Cow trow surged through me. I staggered back from the table, bile rising in my throat. She had planned not just my erasure, but Brandon's death as well. My son, blind and manipulated, walking into a grave she dug with poisoned hands. I slammed my fist onto the table. Papers scattered, but I gathered them again, each page sharper than any blade. Eli had known this too. That was why he buried the fortune elsewhere. Why he left me the map. Why he trusted me to uncover the recording. Mini-climax returned as thunder cracked above the ranch. I clutched the pocket watch, pressing it hard into my palm until the edges cut. The tick steadied me, a reminder that time reveals what lies cannot hide forever. I spread the evidence in 3 piles. First, the offshore accounts, proof that our wealth remained untouched. Second, the deeds and mortgages showing the Buckhead mansion was a trap, not a treasure. Third, the recordings. Tiffany's voice damning herself, the doctor complicit, the friend laughing at death. Each pile glowed with purpose in the candlelight. Rain streaked the windows, marking time with relentless certainty. I whispered into the silence. Eli, I see it now. You built this fortress for me. You knew I would find it when the world thought I was finished. The words from his letter echoed. When your voice shakes, let the documents speak. My voice might tremble in court. My memory might falter under Tiffany's lies. But paper and recordings do not stammer. They do not fear. They hold steady. As night deepened, I realized something else. Brandon believed he had stripped me of everything, but in truth he had chained himself to Tiffany's scheme. She would bleed him dry, then bury him. Unless I acted. Unless I used Eli's arsenal before it was too late. Cow trow peaked once more. I slammed the safe door shut with finality, the echo rolling through the empty house. This was not just survival anymore. This was war. I gathered the papers, bound them tight with string, and placed them beside the recorder. Tomorrow I would make copies. Tomorrow I would find allies. But tonight I let the rain play its song while I pressed Eli's watch to my heart and whispered a vow. You tried to silence me, Tiffany. You thought time was on your side. But time belongs to me now, and time will speak with every page, every tape, every truth you tried to bury. The storm roared approval. The knock on the door startled me. 3 sharp raps, deliberate, carrying weight. I had not told anyone I was here at the ranch. My first thought was Tiffany, but when I pulled the curtain back, I saw a familiar figure standing in the rain. Reggie Stone, Eli's closest friend, the man who had once toasted our anniversary, who had argued cases with brilliance that could silence a courtroom. His hair was grayer now, but his eyes still burned. I opened the door and he stepped inside, shaking water from his coat. "Ellie," he said simply. "He told me you would call, but you didn't. So I came." Mini climax arrived as he placed a folder on the table without ceremony. Eli left me instructions. He knew this day would come. He knew Brandon would be led astray. He prepared a strategy long before the fight began. My breath caught. "He told you," Reggie nodded. "Not everything. Enough." He built a wall of legal traps around the real fortune. Offshore trusts, conditional clauses, recorded statements. He knew Tiffany's pattern. He studied her longer than anyone. I spread Eli's papers across the table, the safe's contents still fresh. Reggie's eyes scanned them, and he smiled grimly. "Yes. This is what I expected. You are not alone, Ellie. You were never meant to fight this battle without allies." Rain pounded the windows, marking the moment. The pocket watch in my palm ticked steadily, as though Eli himself approved. Then another knock came softer this time. I stiffened. Reggie gestured for calm and opened the door. On the porch stood Marcus and Delilah Jenkins, the parents of Tiffany's late husband, Paul. For years I had known them only through whispers. Tiffany had painted them as bitter, meddlesome, unworthy of seeing their grandchildren. Now they stood before me, their faces etched with loss, their clothes damp from the storm. Delilah spoke first, voice trembling. "She told us lies, Ellie. Said we would ruin her marriage. That Paul never wanted us near. But we know the truth now. We know what she did to our boy." Marcus's jaw tightened. "We thought we lost our chance to fight her. Then we heard what happened in court. We realized you were the only one who might understand. We came to help." Mini climax deepened. My chest ached at their words. For so long I thought I bore this war alone. But grief had carved allies out of strangers. We gathered around the table, 4 figures in the flickering candlelight. The documents lay between us, silent but powerful. Reggie traced his finger across deeds and contracts. "This is enough to open a case. Not yet to win, but enough to strike." Delilah leaned forward, eyes fierce. "We'll testify. About Paul. About her lies. About the money she drained." Marcus added, voice like stone. "And about the child she stole. That child deserves to know the truth one day." The weight of their pain pressed heavy, but it strengthened the air around us. For the first time since the gavel fell in that courtroom, I felt less alone. Cao Trao surged as I realized what had formed here. Not an army, not a crowd. Just a small, quiet alliance. 4 people bound by betrayal, anchored by love, fueled by the need for truth. Reggie closed the folder and met my eyes. Eli always said you had quiet strength. Now you have quiet allies. We will move carefully. Tiffany thrives on spectacle. We will build in shadows, and when the time comes, we will let the paperwork speak. The phrase echoed stronger than thunder. Paperwork. The unshakable weapon Eli trusted above all. I touched the pocket watch, hearing its tick in harmony with the rain. Mini climax returned as Marcus asked the question I feared. "And Brandon, what about him? If she planned Paul's death, if she poisoned you, what will she do to your son?" I swallowed hard. Images of Tiffany's voice on the recording filled my head, her laughter, as she plotted Brandon's end. "She means to bury him," I whispered. "Unless we stop her." Silence fell. The storm outside roared, but inside resolve hardened. Reggie spoke at last. "Then we stop her. With law. With truth. With patience. No theatrics. Just evidence lined one after another until no judge can deny it." I looked at the faces around me. Reggie's stern calm. Marcus's granite anger. Delilah's wounded but burning eyes. This was no accident. Eli had known they would come. He had left paths leading them here, just as he left me the safe. The rain eased slightly, as if the mountain itself paused to listen. I whispered more to Eli than to the room. We are ready now. The silence has ended. The fight begins. The pocket watch ticked in my palm. The papers waited in neat stacks. The alliance breathed as one. The manila folder felt heavier than stone in my arms. Reggie walked beside me through the marble lobby of the federal building, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Rain dripped from our coats, pooling on the polished floor. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of judgment. Hook cut sharp. We were not here to beg. We were here to strike. At the reception desk, Reggie slid the folder forward. Evidence for immediate review, he said. His voice carried the calm authority of decades in courtrooms. My hand trembled only once as I released the stack offshore accounts, fraudulent deeds, Tiffany's forged contracts, and the memory card holding her own voice, plotting death. Mini-climax surged as the clerk looked from Reggie to me. You're filing with the Bureau, yes. I answered, my voice steady. With the Bureau and the court, tonight. Within an hour, we sat across from 2 FBI agents in a sterile room. The air smelled of coffee and cold paper. They spread the documents across the table, faces tightening with each page. Reggie narrated like a conductor, Eli's trail of trusts, the debts hidden in the Buckhead mansion, the photos of unmarked bottles Tiffany had tucked in her bathroom cabinet. Then I placed the recorder in the center. Play it, I whispered. Tiffany's voice filled the room again, dripping venom. Once Brandon has the estate, he's mine. And when the time is right, he'll follow the others. The agents froze, exchanged looks, then leaned closer. When the second voice, the doctor, spoke of dosage adjustments, I saw their jaws tighten. The third voice laughed about her pattern of widowhood. The senior agent closed the folder with finality. We've heard enough. A warrant will be issued tonight. The words struck like lightning. For months I had been silenced in court, branded unstable. Now my husband's foresight and my persistence were speaking louder than any insult Tiffany hurled. We left the building under cover of night. Rain sheeted down, soaking the streets of Atlanta, hissing against streetlights. Reggie lifted his collar. It will happen quickly now, he said. Stay close. Mini-climax returned when headlights swept across us at the ranch driveway hours later. Black SUVs rolled in engines, low wipers beating time. Men and women in dark jackets stepped out their backs, straight, their movements efficient. From the ridge above Tiffany's mansion, I watched. My pocket watch ticked in my hand, its weight grounding me. Below, shadows moved like chess pieces surrounding the house Brandon thought he owned. At exactly midnight, the front door burst open. Agents poured inside. Shouts cut through the rain boots, thundered against tile. I gripped Reggie's arm as a figure was dragged out, wrists bound in steel. Tiffany. Her hair clung to her face, her mouth twisted with rage. Even in handcuffs, she tried to perform shouting about conspiracies and jealousy. But her voice cracked when she saw the agents carry out boxes, documents, pills, devices, proof she could no longer bury. Cow trow swelled as another figure stumbled into the light. Brandon, his face, pale eyes wide drenched, as though the storm had seeped into his soul. What is happening? He shouted. You said it was safe. You said, Tiffany sneered. Fool. You were useful. Nothing more. His knees buckled as the truth carved into him. For the first time he looked toward the ridge where I stood under my umbrella. Our eyes met through sheets of rain. Confusion, betrayal, and something else, remorse, flickered across his face. Mini-climax deepened. He mouthed words I could not hear, but I read them in the dim light. I'm sorry. The agents pushed Tiffany into a vehicle, her protests drowned by the storm. Another SUV pulled forward to take Brandon for questioning, not as a criminal yet, but as a man who had been used as her pawn. I exhaled, a sound torn between grief and relief. The mansion, once a symbol of victory for them, now glared hollow under flashing lights. Papers had spoken louder than promises. Rain fell harder, but I welcomed it. It washed the bitterness from the night, mingling with tears I did not hide. I thought of Eli, of his careful preparations, of the words he left me. When your voice shakes, let the documents speak. Tonight they had. The pocket watch ticked steady in my hand. Time had turned. The cameras flashed the moment I stepped onto the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted my name, their voices sharp as thunder. Microphones thrust forward questions, colliding in the rain-soaked air. I lowered my umbrella, letting the storm shield me. I had not come for spectacle. I had come for justice. Hook cut deep. Tiffany, the so-called Black Widow of Buckhead, was finally on trial. Inside the courtroom pulsed with tension. Rows of spectators filled every bench, reporters scribbling cameras, waiting to capture the fall of a woman who had fed on lives and fortunes. Across the aisle, Tiffany sat with her lawyers, her hair styled, her smile faint, as if she still believed she could charm the world. Mini-climax struck when the prosecution played the first recording. Her voice, smug and cold, poured from the speakers. Once Brandon has the estate, he's mine. And when the time is right, he'll follow the others. Gasps rippled through the room. Brandon, seated near the front, bowed his head into his hands. Then came the second clip. Tiffany's laughter sharp as glass. The old woman. She won't last. The pills are slow but effective. By the time anyone questions it, she'll be a memory. I closed my eyes. To hear her plot, my death in her own words, was both wound and weapon. The jury leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Silence filled the air, heavy and undeniable. Reggie rose, neck steady as ever, placing the mountain of documents before the judge. Offshore accounts, forged deeds, medical receipts, photographs of pills. Each sheet a blade in the quiet war Eli had begun. Mini-climax deepened as Tiffany's lawyers tried to object, waving their hands demanding mistrials. But the judge cut them short. The evidence stands. Then my moment came. I was called to the stand. My steps were slow but unbroken. I swore the oath, then met Tiffany's eyes across the courtroom. She smirked, as if daring me to falter. My voice did not shake. You underestimated the silence of a humiliated woman, I said. You thought my shame would bury me. But silence does not mean surrender. It means patience. And patience has revealed you. Gasps again. The phrase hung in the room like thunder after lightning. Cow trow surged when Brandon rose, suddenly his voice cracking. She used me. She poisoned me with lies. Mother, His words broke into sobs. He turned toward me, his shoulders shaking, tears spilling unchecked. I'm sorry. Every eye turned to him. The son who had betrayed me now, shattered in public, the spell of Tiffany broken. The judge's gavel fell once, twice, 3 times. Order in the court. The prosecution delivered the final strike. The third recording played Tiffany, bragging about past husbands, about money drained, about never leaving empty-handed. The jury flinched at her arrogance, her casual cruelty. The verdict came swift. Guilty on all counts, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. The sentence, life imprisonment without parole. Tiffany's face drained of color. The mask cracked. She screamed at the judge, at the agents, at the walls. But no one listened. Paperwork had spoken. Recordings had spoken. Truth had spoken. Rain lashed the windows as the gavel fell a final time. Mini-climax closed as agents cuffed her, leading her away. The press surged outside, ready to call her by the name she earned, the Black Widow. I stepped down from the stand, pocket watch pressed into my palm. Its tick steady, its weight warm. Eli's voice echoed in memory. When your voice shakes, let the documents speak. They had spoken. They had ended her reign. Brandon approached, his eyes red, his words broken. Mother, if you can ever forgive me. I touched his arm. Not forgiveness yet, but not rejection either. Only the truth. The children need you to be better. Start there. The storm outside roared louder than applause. The gavel fell one last time, but this time it was not to condemn me. It was to restore me. The judge's words echoed across the hushed courtroom. The estate is reinstated to Eleanor Hayes. Full guardianship of Ethan and Zoe is granted. All prior accusations are null and void. Hook struck like lightning. In a single breath, what Tiffany tried to bury had risen. My name, my dignity, my bloodline. Mini-climax surged as I felt the children's arms wrap around my waist moments later. Ethan's small voice whispered, "Grandma, can we go home now?" Zoe clutched my hand, her eyes searching mine for safety. For months, they had been pawns in a cruel game. Now they were simply children again. Marcus and Delilah Jenkins wept openly in the gallery. I invited them forward, and when Ethan and Zoe saw them, recognition bloomed. The grandparents they had been denied now knelt before them, arms trembling with joy. "We missed you so much," Delilah cried, pressing her cheek to Zoe's hair. Marcus's voice cracked as he whispered to Ethan, "You'll never be alone again." The reunion pulsed with both pain and renewal. It was not just victory, it was healing. I turned then to Brandon. His eyes red, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than I remembered. He stepped forward, voice raw. "Mother, I betrayed you. I let her twist me, blind me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will earn it. I swear I will spend the rest of my life fighting for people like you, for elders stripped of their dignity by greed." Mini-climax deepened when he added, "I will resign from my firm. I will take cases no one wants. I will defend those who have no one." I searched his face. For the first time in years, I saw not arrogance, but humility. I nodded slowly. "Begin with yourself, Brandon. Build again. For Ethan and Zoe, for Paul's parents, for Eli's memory." Tears ran freely down his face. He bowed his head as if the storm had finally broken. In the weeks that followed, life began to stitch itself back together. The mansion stood empty, its debts consuming it. I let it go, signing it away without regret. The real fortune, Eli's carefully hidden assets, returned not as a trophy, but as a responsibility. Mini-climax rose again as I signed papers establishing the Elijah Hayes Foundation. Named for the man whose foresight saved us, its mission was simple: to defend the elderly against financial predators, to provide counsel, shelter, and strength. At the first meeting, survivors filled the room, men and women who had been silenced, humiliated, stripped of wealth and worth. They held folders, receipts, bruised dignity. As I spoke, I felt Eli's presence steadying me. "You are not forgotten. You are not powerless. The paperwork will speak for you too." The motif planted years ago had blossomed into a garden of justice. Brandon kept his vow. I saw him in courtrooms, standing beside elders whose children had stolen their pensions, whose caregivers had forged signatures. He argued with passion, with fury, with shame turned into resolve. And each time when his eyes found mine across the gallery, I nodded. Silent forgiveness, not yet spoken, but growing. Marcus and Delilah became constants in Ethan and Zoe's lives. Sundays turned into family dinners, laughter spilling across the ranch porch. The children thrived again, Zoe chasing fireflies in the yard, Ethan tinkering with the old radio Eli had once kept in the barn. Life was not perfect, but it was real, and it was ours. Cow Trow unfolded, not in a courtroom, but on a rainy evening months later. I stood on the ranch porch, the children asleep inside the foundation's paperwork, filed on my desk. Rain fell lightly, a gentler echo of the storm that had once drowned me. I held Eli's pocket watch in my palm, its tick steady, faithful. I whispered into the night, "Love and truth always find their way back, no matter how long it takes." The words were not just mine. They were his. They were ours. Mini-climax closed the circle. The rain brushed my cheeks like blessing, not punishment. Silence stretched wide, but it was no longer hollow. It was freedom. The story ended, not with fury, but with release. With children safe, with family rebuilt, with justice written in ink and sealed by time. And as I stepped back inside, I left the porch light burning a beacon for anyone who had been silenced, a promise that their truth too could return. And so my story found its ending. Not in silence, not in shame, but in the steady rhythm of truth, returning like rain against the porch roof. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? I read every message, every city, every voice. If this story touched you, press the like button. Subscribe so you won't miss the next journey of quiet strength and justice. Share it with someone who believes as I do, that love and truth always find their way back. Together we can keep the light burning for those who still wait for their truth to be heard.